standpoint of what I'm getting out of what came out of the movie The Secret, and what leap do we know, and what quantum physics is discovering regarding the law of attraction, and what we think about, we bring about by just focusing on, for example, the nature of evil and all of the negative things that we could choose to focus on in the world, by being preoccupied with that, because thoughts are actually things that we're more likely to experience that. Whereas, even though you know that that's going on, and then someone such as Nina, who's actually lived through it probably from the bird's eye view, when it was really intense, not that it's any less intense now, she's choosing, not because she's putting her head in the sand, but because she has better things to do than to feel bad about all the bad things that are going on.
You know, that has to do also with age. At this point, I don't have very much time left to emphasize the first part of my life,
To dwell on it.
and I have been doing that a lot. And I prefer to enjoy the here and now, because I read the book Swerve. Did anybody read that?
Yes, excellent.
Excellent book.
Which, what was the book, sir?
The Swerve.
Okay, no.
From the classic to Middle Ages to the Dark Ages. Very
Right.
interesting. The Swerve.
Yes.
Swerving.
I'm sorry to have interrupted.
No, you really, I mean, maybe I was putting words in your mouth, except that I would wish that I had started what you're saying you started as a result of age when I was a lot younger, because whatever it takes to feel better about yourself and about what's going on in the world and how you can contribute to the positive, I would like to, if I had children, I would be wanting to start them out on that path early and not wait until they were beaten down by life and then come to the conclusion that, you know, so what I got out of the study of the law of attraction is if I can create my own reality in my mind and attract the positive by focusing on the positive, and I'm free to choose to focus on whatever I want, and there's all these things, both good and bad, that I choose to focus on that which feels good but immoral.
Well, what do you mean by the law of attraction?
He's not familiar with what you're talking about.
That since thoughts are actually things, meaning that
They're formed mass.
that everything that is manifested reality, like this table, was thought first. So thoughts, even though they are intangible, are actually not, and quantum physics has discovered that. So that if you look at what it is that you personally are, I mean, I've looked at it. I've lived my life looking at this closely for long enough to know that my own proof is that what I am focusing my attention upon is what comes back to me. The old saying of what goes around comes around. I don't need to read
Why
a
are
book.
you relating this to quantum physics?
Because quantum scientific, because it matters. It's, I guess, a step out of philosophy in that if we're going to attribute any significance to anything, most people want to know what the scientific validity is behind such as the law of
It
attraction.
sounds like you read Dr. Chopra and The Secret.
I just saw him the other night at
Dr.
a
Chopra
party.
and The Secret, that's what it sounds like you're talking about. You're mixing both of them together.
You mean Deepak Chopra?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I read him, but he wasn't part of The Secret as far as
No, but the way what you're discussing is from his books. His books and The Secret, The Law of Attraction, and the power of positive thinking.
to the question of evil, speaking scientifically too, I read a chemist years ago from England who wrote about the big questions, like the ones we're addressing, and he answered everything as much as he could from a scientific perspective. And when he spoke about the question of evil, he distinguished between evils that come from nature, you know, like hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever, and they're only evil if someone experiences them badly. And we can have volcano eruptions on Mars, doesn't bother us much, at least we don't think so. But then there are evils that are inherent in the human body, so that, you know, cancers and so on. They're bad for animals, they're bad for human beings. But Sigmund Freud, I remember, in The Future of Illusion, said that of all the evils, the greatest evil that human beings face is the evil that other people inflict on human beings.
I agree with that.
Well, my question is, as we you know, address this question, what kind of evil it so far, my suspicion is there's something that could be built on by defining it more carefully. And really, he basically started the whole movement of global responsibility
When?
in terms of ethics. Excuse me?
When?
He wrote this stuff in the 1980s. He was still, I heard him speak at Columbia University in 2000. He was in his 80s at the time. So he was still very much involved in this, you know.
Well, we haven't reached it yet, have we?
Excuse me?
We
explained how she went into the diplomatic service and so on with the assumption that religion is just a distraction. And so when things were happening in the Middle East, when she was the Secretary of State, she said, I don't want to hear about religion. Don't bring that in. Things have been, mixed up enough as they are, But then she was converted, as it were, not to religion, but to the realization that these cultures of the world are totally impregnated with a religious ethos, mindset, worldview, and you can't really separate those two. And probably, I suspect, what she was dealing with is that our country, the Western nations, have become much more secularized. And therefore, we can think about culture without religion, but I think in vast portions of the world, she's right.
They have nothing left but their religion, that's just it.
Well, but even the very wealthy, like Osama bin Laden, they can be motivated by their religion to do obviously disastrous things, and then they might very well exploit all these unemployed and people who have no purpose in their life, and because of course, estranged from any positive purpose and so on. I think they can exploit
You
that.
see, if on the other hand, they had encountered an Osama bin Laden who was thinking in positive terms rather than hatred, he could have galvanized them around that thought and done a lot of good.
Sure.
So it's, we are all waiting for a charismatic person,
On the
the,
side.
the opposite of Hitler, right? To emerge in the Middle East and do something positive.
Could I just maybe get back to the comment, good and evil largely depend upon circumstances, because what's implied there is that it's kind of random and circumstantial, and that depending upon your circumstances, you could be a victim of those circumstances, and the evil that is possible is going to be your story, or vice versa, which to me takes all the responsibility off of the individual who's in the circumstances and his or her reaction and response to what may be considered very difficult circumstances, or maybe even very favorable circumstances. So to me, the circumstances are not irrelevant, but horrible circumstances could inspire, and often have and are now, the greatest good, because it makes a person focus on a way out and brings out the very best. And sometimes the most favorable circumstances bring out the very worst. So the circumstances, I don't feel are irrelevant, but I wouldn't want to believe, myself at least, that I am controlled by the circumstances. I don't believe that at all.
You believe in choice.
Free will.
Right,
Free will.
certain. You can make out of it whatever you choose, depending upon how you look at it, which brings the control back to the individual, and using circumstances to make you introspect the way you have lived your entire life, and get, focused on what is the most positive response under these circumstances.
Not
But
everybody,
that's the lesson.
not everybody has the privilege
That's a privilege that, well, we can't get into religion.
to get to this point.
Mentally, I mean, you don't have a privilege to think the way you want to think about something?
That's
That's not what you mean.
When you are, let me tell you, when you are involved in getting the daily bread and trying to survive in bad circumstances, you don't have time to think that I could think like this or like that, or that I have a choice.
how to experience something. We create our own suffering. In my mind, we create our own suffering. Pain is a physical thing where something happens to your body and you feel pain. But suffering is up here. So there's always a choice to choose that it's not suffering and to find, and we hear the heroic stories of people who have said, no, I'm not choosing to suffer.
Mandela,
I'm going to do it differently.
27 years in prison, solitary confinement, and he comes out to do what he did. You gotta be thinking something different than most people would think in
But
those
you know,
circumstances.
a lot of people ascribe this to the genetic factor. That either you are born able to think in positive ways.
You might
Well,
be
that's part of
programmed
it, yeah,
differently
I-
from
but
your
you can learn-
ancestry.
you can learn differently.
Right.
You can-
That's a program,
Yeah, it
I think.
takes
That's
time.
not
It takes time, you have
genetics.
Yeah, and it
Takes
takes
a
a
long
long
time.
time.
From your
Many
lineage,
generations.
you inherit, or you adopt certain ways of reacting, behaving, might even go so far as disease. That's not genetic, that's
A learned
right, it's a program running that you can release and change, truly.
You're learning it.
I do.
Yeah,
I've seen it,
so.
I've seen the result of that.
No, I have an interesting experience along that line. I'm a college professor, and many of my students are, they're from all over the world, but there's a good portion of them who are from the ghetto. And
Which
I
ghetto?
know.
Which
You,
ghetto?
right in the U.S., in Jamaica, Queens, and that area. And many all from Manhattan, they come to our university. And it's quite a different experience. But I am really impressed very often by the motivation that they have to break out of that and to start a whole new way of looking at life and the life. And they have to, I think, they have to fight against very difficult odds because the culture they're coming from discourages them from doing just that, particularly the men. The women students are quite free. The men are not as free.
You have to be macho.
That's it. So they, to go through education and all, sounds like they're going into the white man's world as it were, betraying the community, something like that. And I saw that years ago when I worked among the Sioux Indians in South Dakota. That if they wanted to get educated, some of the people on the reservation would look down upon them as traitors. But nevertheless, I can see within that framework both men and women coming from these very disadvantaged backgrounds, which discourage any kind of really human fulfillment.
Teresa seems to be saying that's genetic and motivating.
Excuse me?
Teresa seems to be.
No, I'm saying it's not, I know, I said it's not genetic.
Not genetic.
Right, that you have a
But in
choice.
this case,
You
it's
can-
social, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things because you can find other kids in the very same circumstances, maybe brothers or sisters. I had one case of a cousin who was shot to death in a drug deal, and his cousin was in my class, and he came from the same tough background, but he really was working 3 jobs in addition to going to school to make something of himself. So it can't be just, that's just one example, but it can't be all social circumstances. People deal with it differently, and what makes that difference
try to,
You're a trader.
you're the trader to them, instead of saying, you know, like one student I had, and never showed up. You know, who are you? At the end. And, oh, I'm in your class. I said, well, I take attendance every day. You're not in my class. Well, if you don't, you know, mark me present and that I get a grade, I won't get my grants. I go, well, then you're not getting your grants. You know, but it wasn't just once. This happened. And this was not a person of color. So what happens, certain people know how to work the system, and then some students are fantastic. They work against these odds and against what society does, because I've had people who were on welfare, and then they got a job on the side, but they were legitimate jobs. So they told them, and the welfare was cut to less than half of what the job was. So the kid had to quit the job instead of trying to build themselves up plus going to school. So you have people on both sides. Is that good and evil? It's survival for both of them, whatever their background is. Because the first job I ever had teaching, I had a principal who said this, and I believe it to this day, and this may be skewing the subject, but he said, education begins 3 years before conception. Meaning, depends on, it doesn't mean that it has to be genetics, but it's the social background of who the folks were. I mean, there are people, and I've had a number of them, that's what keeps you in teaching, because the wonderful stories is what keeps you going. That it is that background, that they have to fight many times. And I'm sure we've all had to fight for ourselves in different ways.
So I think that's what I was thinking. It's your lineage, but it's not limited to lineage. It's cultural and social. So it's the package that you come into. And so you go along with the package, or you fight to do it differently.
Okay, I have to try to keep us a little bit more focused on the issue of good and evil.
Evil.
Or into what I consider.
So I think evil falls into that category.
Well, that's it.
Excuse me, I don't think that's evil. I think it's people that just don't know any better, so they just follow along. They're not strong-minded enough to know that there are other things that they can do, other outs.
Oh, I
I
wasn't
don't
calling
think
the
it's-
people evil.
yeah.
I was saying that it would develop in the same way.
No, I understand. I just think that some of these people do not know any better. They don't know how, and then they just follow what they know, and that's it. I don't think they're evil or.
But I think that was the basis of the very beginning of the question of, well, what is evil? You know?
I think that there's a big difference between the actual subject, which is the nature of evil, and what we've been discussing, which are the effects of evil. And maybe it's an impossible question to answer, but if we're going to stick to the subject and trying to answer it, maybe it will be difficult to say anything other than what we've been saying. But the nature of evil, to me,
Is capitalism evil?
Yes.
No,
No,
no, I
Does
think
evil
it is.
exist in nature?
I mean,
No, I don't think so.
Nature,
I
like
think the
nature.
question,
Well,
All around you.
the
Is
trans,
cancer evil?
No. Evil in nature?
yes, well, it depends on how you define evil. In this case, if a tiger eats you, is that evil?
no.
No. I don't think it's evil.
So would it be that evil is what is done to a human by another human?
Yes.
And is evil what the victim feels that is done to
Named
him?
unto.
And the other doer
But
is the one
that's-
who feels it's righteous?
But you know what?
Is that,
It depends, it's again relative, depends on the form the evil takes. But there is a saying, stones and sticks.
sticks and
six
stones.
stones may break
Oh.
your bones.
The names of
But she's right, there's another saying, I know what she's talking about. Go ahead, finish it. No, the other one, you started it, you forgot.
Stones and
That's where
sticks.
she was done.
This is
Oh,
what
that's,
I
I thought that was a different one.
No, I don't know.
There is
Well,
another
what
one.
really, Nina, what you're saying is
so subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
Evil.
right, but you, because,
Well,
I
no,
said earlier,
no.
Well, that's
If
the
somebody
question,
stands
yeah.
there and tells you, look what I'm doing, killing your children, and kills them.
Oh,
That's an
To you,
intentional,
yes,
to me,
it's a fact.
it's the,
It becomes a fact more than, yeah.
but to me, it's utter evil.
It,
In my mind, it is an utter evil,
Yeah.
all right, in my mind.
Right? What is
Well, I'm trying to tie these things together a little bit, and I'm thinking back, I think they belong together. I think they belong together, the nature of evil, and as you're saying, the effects and so on. But years ago, I read this author, he was what they call an ethologist. I didn't know what
A
an
what?
ethologist. Ethologist.
it?
They study the behavior of, not efficient, no. An ethologist, they study
Or an
those
ethicist?
the behavior of animals. This guy is a well-known Austrian, controversial politically, maybe, I don't know, but he certainly, he came out with a famous book on aggression. But he wrote a series of books, and when he started out with aggression, he argued that the very development of the human being through evolution, compared to the other animals, so that we can think, conceptualize, and so on, gave us a potential for evil. Because we had a way of using this brain power, this conceptualization, to anticipate and say, well, maybe this other guy living in the cave, I could get rid of him, and so
And
on.
I can have the cake.
And you don't, yeah, now you have the cave. Now you don't have to follow on that, but he said the potential is there. So according to Conrad Lawrence,
Conrad Lawrence.
Conrad Lawrence,
With the geese, he had this.
with the geese and apes too.
Yeah.
So you know the person. But what interested me recently, I came across references to a later book of his on civilization. And this is where I think some of our argument went, because he felt that there were about 7 points in our civilization that have developed in modern civilization that make it even more difficult to be human, to be truly human, and easier to be violent and destructive. And one of them was the institutional organization of civilization that we deal with. And I know you brought up several times the political. So is it possible that there is something inherently evil there, that the human being, if Conrad Lawrence is correct, who has the possibility of evil inherently because of evolution, could be influenced this way?
Keyword evolution. You go back, Dawn, I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine, right now, on email. And he's taking the point of view that Darwin's theory of the survival of the fittest is not quite accurate, in his judgment anyway. And that natural selection is a better way to describe it. But it's the same thing. It comes out the same way, in my mind, anyway. That survival of the fittest produces a natural selection. And this survival of the fittest still that which governs human activity on Earth right now. Is it? Survival of the fittest, to think quicker, to earn more, to respond, to a threat, to
But some of that is
overreact.
provided by society. Some of the competitiveness and so on
No.
is created by the society in which we live. And some people can't handle it. It's too much of a tension between the humanity and this competitiveness and so on that they experience. And
That's
he claims that that's why you get neurotic personalities, antisocial personalities who shoot up people in the movie house and so on.
That's
So I don't think
interesting.
he's just too far from the mark.
That's true what you're saying. It's true.
There's a strain, a stress built into our very society that some of the people whose genetic code results from evolution can handle it, and others don't handle it that well either. Not to excuse evil, but when you have these really outrageous examples of
Seems like
people.
there's always a brute in the classroom, there's always a bully in the courtyard,
Yeah.
and where does that come from?
Is there a difference, is there a difference between the behavior that would be considered evil and the person? I mean, is it synonymous in everybody's mind here that that is unquestionably evil behavior? Almost across the board, I get the impression that the jump is automatically made that that person exhibiting that behavior is therefore evil. I'm just asking, is that evil behavior or is that definitely an evil person?
What's
No, I don't think it's an
evil?
evil person, I think it's a weak person, a weak-minded person.
I think it's intention, as Leslie, I don't know your name, but I think it's intention. And I think it's intention behind the action that makes something evil.
Yes, definitely.
Is it to the receiver or to the doer
I think,
of the?
I think it's the intention of the doer.
Mm.
Because, I'll have to work on an example. But I do believe you can do something with the intention, you can even say something with the intention of not causing harm or not intending anything negative. And you can say it with the intention of being negative
Or
And-
hurtful.
or hurtful. And you can take it down to that simplest little detail. And I think that's where you can realize the potential of intention. So I think there's things, like, even like the atomic bomb. I'm sure that knowledge was created for good reason, but it was the intention of someone to do harm that made it evil.
Well, let's take like, the gangs right now in Egypt or Yemen. I guess it would be easier in Egypt because you see the pictures in front of you. The ones who started, let's say, throwing, and then there are other young people who are just in the crowd. And then there's others in the crowd who take more items to throw. That's the intention, is the throwing. The others that are in the crowd with them, just even if they're following or want to see what's going on, that might not be the intention of evil. But the one who is taking this and doing it on purpose, knowing that it's wrong, because they do know it's wrong, at least wrong in our eyes,
You're talking about
you know.
something that's called mob psychology or?
Right. Right, so you have,
I
so,
don't think they necessarily think of it as wrong and right, it's just a reaction. It's
but
just
then
an
who's
act.
the kid who doesn't take a stone and throws it?
Maybe he's just a little scared, maybe he's caught up in it, but he doesn't take that next step because something's stopping him, but I don't think it's because he's thinking it's wrong.
So I think this whole question of good and evil is subjective, of course, to where we think, where we focus, to the moment. And I think it's a question that is unanswerable.
If I may, I'll go back to something I said at the beginning of this gathering. I heard one of the Greek philosophers, which one was, who said just 2,000 years ago that fire burns the same way here and in Persia. Man's ideas of right and wrong are not the same. So it depends on time and place as to what is right and what is wrong.
Like 9/11, that was evil. That's the best example of evil.
Yeah, in our eyes, in our eyes.
They were celebrating.
And to them also.
They're celebrating.
I think they use that business of Allah, you do it for Allah, because I think that's just a cop-out excuse.
No.
I just
I
don't,
wish you
I
were right,
don't,
but
I don't
I
buy
agree.
that, I just don't.
Well, here's, the philosophers,
originally, to my mind, based on the developed concept of religion, of the religions that peoples in the Atlantic civilization have developed. And now they have incorporated it and it's secular. On the other hand, I understand that children are born and exhibit at a very young age a sense of fairness or not fairness, which is a moral stance. So I don't know what the answer is.
Socrates would say that we're not there to find the answers. There are only questions.
Well,
Was
so there are
the
all these.
Crusades moral?
Is-
Was the
Sorry?
Crusades conducted in the name of religion, were they moral?
To the Crusaders, they
Right.
were.
To the Crusades?
Yes, yeah.
But Muhammad, eventually they were not.
And for us, as a result of the Crusades, it was a very bad idea, wasn't it?
Well, we learned a lot in the Western world from that contact with the Muslim world. I mean, on the positive side effects, because we learned about arithmetic, we learned
No,
about
we learned about
architecture.
We learned about arithmetic from the contact between Christians and Muslims in Spain.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But there was no, we didn't have to invade them.
No, I'm not justifying that. I think the only way you could justify the Crusades was that the fact that the Muslim leader in Egypt, who was the top man at the time, in the 11th century, actually destroyed some of the holiest Christian shrines. And so the Christendom, which was all of Europe, felt that this is the end of, this is the beginning of the end times. So they felt they had to go in. But when they went, a lot of people who joined the Crusades were not of that high motivation and intention. And they destroyed a lot of other things. They destroyed many cities of their Eastern Christian brothers and sisters. And one group coming
They
from...
killed the Jews
They killed the
on the way.
Jews on the way, right? So, as a result,
Christians,
the whole...
the Christians started living in underground, they made underground cities to hide
From the Crusades.
from the Muslims during the Crusades
Oh, yeah.
in Turkey and Eastern countries.
Chelsea, pick up on hold one. Chelsea, pick up hold
So-
one.
Well, anyway, I was going to throw out one idea because, as you said, Socrates would ask questions. Following on the idea that maybe there could be some kind of a common denominator among the different worldviews, many of which, or all of which have some religious background. I once toyed with the idea of harmony. Because I found that, as to my experience, all the religions of the world that I know of, all the great religions, respect the idea of harmony. Now, could that possibly be a point of discussion when they say, well, we think this is right because you insulted Allah and so on? So, could we say, but does this have, your violent reaction, does this have any harmonious result?
Can I ask for a definition of harmony?
Well, I think it would be something like in science, biology, the idea of balance. And so you're balancing between some forces and other forces so that human beings can live together in a way that they're not in conflict, in a way that they respect each other and their differences and so on. Now, in principle, Islam respects harmony, as is reflected also in their architecture. I just think that might be a point of discussion with people, because if you're going to say, as Hans Kuhn did, well, we need to work around the idea of a a civil society. Then we have the difference, what does it mean to be a civil society?
But you know, harmony has to be achieved, can be achieved rather, can be achieved when the passions are dormant.
And there's not extreme
No,
behavior.
that's a yin and yang.
Because if there's, go ahead, you go, I'm sorry.
No, but to make the point, as he says, that you only get harmony when the passions are cool.
Yeah.
But when the passions are cool, then you get harmony. That's yin and yang, they have to go together. So where does harmony enter the circle, and where do the passions enter the circle? When you're in conflict, you have to go together.
Well, let's say yin and yang is a perfect example in Asian culture of the harmony that I'm
Well,
talking
I would
about.
hate to think that the only way there can be harmony is if there's no passion. I mean, I'm just not believing that, because I'm not wanting to be that person.
I think
It
that's-
almost is like you're almost dead, so therefore I can't fight and I
You're a
can't have,
basketball player.
and therefore I will be harmonious because I have no
Why can't-
desire left in me.
Why can't people accept other people's passions and just move on?
I was just going to say something cool in that one too, like, I think it's, harmony is really finding our sameness. You know, that we're all human, and we might believe differently, but we all within us come from the same goodness.
And even if you do
And-
believe differently, so what? So
Right,
be it.
right.
What's
So
the
it's
difference?
it's a place, it seems to me that looking at the question of evil, which is really interesting, I'm finding, is really
Exactly what.
looking at how can we be in total acceptance of each other and find our oneness.
What a great word, total acceptance, wow.
But really, doesn't that feel so ironic to feel that out of a discussion of evil, of saying really what we need to do?
And if you're passionate about something, why should I deny you your passion? You know, why?
Well,
just
I
don't
should
see
honor
it.
it. I
Right.
honor your passion for singing.
That's right.
You know, like that. So I'm just thinking, wow, this is like, wait, this is what I'm getting out of a discussion on evil, our oneness. So I think it's really very beautiful.
Welcome, sister.
It is very beautiful. I'm gonna play devil's advocate.
Okay.
The whole world is like it.
Yeah.
Right. So we're here, and probably sitting around this table, we have umpteen years of education among us. But I would say 3/4 of the world, or maybe definite, huh? 90% of the world, okay, I'll say 3/4, is, quote, uneducated to our education system, our going to school. There, as we all know, there are girls and women who will never go to school, and there's also men who wouldn't go to school, but they might have a better chance at it. So we're talking, and we're having a wonderful discussion, and our minds are going all over the place. But,
Do you want to come over here this way?
I was going to say,
Yeah.
take a chicken.
Excuse me for barging in at the last minute.
Sit here?
That's great.
To make the world a better world, our concept of good, and not that it's not evil, but for the mob mentality. I don't know what I'm trying to get at, except that, you know, we're here philosophizing, and the rest of the world is burning.
I'd like to play devil's advocate too, following up on what you said. And it has to do with Joanna's remark, you know, that if we could accept each other, and you said that, total acceptance. I personally experienced that certain religions are very strong on distinguishing people. For instance, in Islam, you're either a true believer or you're an infidel. And one way or another, an infidel doesn't have the same rights as a true believer.
And you can be a Muslim
and infidel as well. And you know that in Christianity, it hasn't been so long ago in this Northern Ireland that people felt that you couldn't be saved, you couldn't be saved. And there are still Christians today who believe if you're not a Christian, you cannot be saved. Now, when you put someone in the category that this person cannot be saved, you have to think less of them. So I don't know who initiated this critique, but some philosopher sometime not that long ago, maybe it was 19th century Europe, raised the idea of the monotheistic religions and said that unlike Buddhism, unlike Hinduism, monotheism is proselytizing. Monotheism wants other people to accept their truth. And his argument was, and it was that monotheism is at the root of so much, if not all, of the world's conflict. And I wonder what you think about that.
There's religion at the root of all evil.
Religion.
No, but in this case, it is religion because the religions of the
East?
East,
And they don't just teach that.
right, the Buddhism and
And Confucianism, and Taoism.
right. So it isn't just religion, it's
Is it monotheism? Is when you have this one God who has these commands, and this is right and this is wrong, and you will be saved if you follow the commands, and, is there any justification to that?
Well, it's all Moses' fault, right?
Moses?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Abraham before?
if there's two people in a room talking, it's gonna be no different than the religions that you're talking about. There's either going to be an acceptance of the other person's viewpoint and an attempt to harmonize how you see the world and how I see the world, or there's going to be a total lack of respect and intrusiveness that could resort to violence at some point if they come to blows because they both have such little respect. And so, I mean, there are many people who are in that mode who don't believe in God and who don't belong to any religion. I mean, that's just going to be what I decide is important to me when I relate to somebody as far as is harmony important or is me being right important.
Yeah, so it's more than just guided by religious convictions.
I think that's a big
personal
part of it.
lives.
Yeah, I don't think
It's
just like,
personal, it's judgmental, it's being judgmental.
no doubt. And I think insecurity is at the basis of all that. I feel I'm being threatened.
Threatened what? Psychologically?
Well, my belief system, number one, is being threatened because you don't think like me. So that's already uncomfortable.
But aren't we the recipients of 19th century European tolerance?
The Enlightenment?
Well, the Enlightenment and even the 19th century, the whole principle of tolerance and liberalism of the 19th century sort. And I think we tend to, it's easier for us to understand tolerance, even if, we have some restrictions on it by reason of our backgrounds.
Describe we.
I think people in the Western world.
But there's a big difference.
Western world. And then the people who have.
except Russia.
No, I don't think they experience. I don't think Russia experienced the Enlightenment and liberalism at all.
No.
And there you see the difference.
Right.
But that's what I mean by we. People in the Western civilization.
But you're separating us again, like if we're gonna work toward this oneness, where we accept everyone, then there's not a we that you see separately or differently.
Well, I think
Like, where's the sameness?
Well, no, we should be looking for the sameness, I agree with you. But I think to understand the difficulty we have in achieving the sameness with people who will not accept a different point of view easily, if at all.
I'm not sure a lot of Americans accept a different
Well,
point of view. I think that's part of the problem. There is a we.
Are you using
But
that as
we
a
can
universal we? Because I think you're getting at us and them. I don't think he's
Well, that's-
talking about
I-
us.
No, I'm talking about Western civilization knows more about the concept of tolerance than the other civilizations for all.
Those are the people I met every day.